Morning, Knicks Nation. Today is Wednesday, the 22nd day of February 2023. I hope you're safe and healthy today on this hump day. I hope your family is also safe and healthy and that the needs of you and your family in terms of food, shelter, clothing, as well as health are being met today. Blessings upon those that work in the healthcare field, along with the first responders, who every day are saving lives. Blessings upon those also who pick up garbage for us to keep streets, sidewalks, parks, wrecks, buildings, stairwells, basements clean and disease-free. Blessings also upon those that make deliveries for our convenience. Double blessings on the men and women who are out here trying to help rescue, deliver, and recover the teenagers and children who are the victims of child molestation and pedophilia. The victims also of prostitution and child prostitution. The victims also of pornography and child pornography, human trafficking and sex slavery. Double curses on the perpetrators, double curses on the profiteers, double curses on the perverts that create this industry. Finally, blessings upon the homeless. There are nearly 600,000 men, women, and children, mostly children, living on the streets of the United States of America, and millions around the world in similar or worse conditions. Blessings upon them, for theirs is the kingdom. So, the New York Knicks again start their second part of the season, last stretch, last 22 games, starting Friday against the Washington Wizards. And this week, we have witnessed, between on the break, the all festivities of All Star Weekend, and then during the course of the week, the players get some time off in the middle of the season. Good move. And so during this week, we've been highlighting certain areas, certain players of the New York Knicks. Today, I want to talk about Julius Randle. And the reason I want to bring up Julius Randle is obviously, I think it's been agreed upon by most of the Knicks Nation. This player is one of the most polarizing players the Knicks have had in a long time. When I say that, this is the first time in a long time in New York where we have actually witnessed of the maturation of a player. What I mean by that is when Julius Randle came to New York, he was in New Orleans Pelicans. Prior to that, he had started his career with the Los Angeles Lakers. I wouldn't say he was a bust, but he wasn't effective in contributing to winning. Let's put it that way. He wasn't effective in contributing to winning, neither on LA or on New Orleans. When he got to New Orleans, he was putting up 2010 numbers. Okay, he was putting up 2010 numbers, so he was definitely talented. Definitely, there's no doubt. He can play NBA basketball, but in terms of contributing to winning, he had never done that on the NBA level. He had never done it in LA. He had not done it in New Orleans. So when the Knicks brought Julius Randle to New York, he was basically, that season, he was basically the last girl at the dance. Scott Perry and Steve Mills went out to California and signed him to a 3-year deal, which was a very moderate deal with a team option on the third year. Okay, so he wasn't the first, even the second choice, but they had a smart pecking order, and they realized that he was going to be the only girl left, and they went and got him. And signed him to a $63 million contract. He came to New York to be the man. The problem was he wasn't ready to be the man. As far as his game, his maturity level, all of that. He wasn't ready. And when I say maturity, I mean basketball-wise, not as a personal individual. He had no off-court issues. But as a basketball player, maturity as a basketball player, he wasn't ready. And his first year with the Knicks showed that. He oftentimes dribbled into double teams. He oftentimes took bad shots. He oftentimes wasn't looking for his teammates. He oftentimes completely gave no effort on the defensive side of the basketball. But he put up 2010 again. But after his first season, the Knicks having a losing season that year in Julius Randle's first season, the Knicks were looking to trade him. They were going to trade him, and they had put it out. They had let it be known at the end of Julius Randle's first season that they were looking for a power forward. They were looking for a power forward. And not only that, they were looking for a stretch four, was what they were putting out there. And so there were several opportunities or players or prospects that the Knicks were talking about in terms of getting a stretch four after Julius Randle's first year in New York. As a matter of fact, that particular year, the Knicks had David Fizdale as their coach, and they only won 21 games. So they were going to be in the lottery. At that time, in that March of that first year, Leon Rose took over as president of basketball operations. They fired David Fizdale. Mike Miller was the interim coach. And so a new regime, at the end of that first year, a new regime had come in. And a lot of changes took place between the end of that year, which was 2020, the end of the season, and the beginning of the next season. Lots of changes. So they brought in Tom Thibodeau. They brought in Walt Perrin. They brought in Kenny Payne. They brought in Mike Woodson. They brought in a whole bunch of really high-level coaches and executives in the New York Knicks. The survivor was Scott Perry. Steve Mills was moved back out of the basketball operations, back to the executive position at MSG, but he wasn't the basketball operations guy. He wasn't president of basketball. He was president of the Knicks anymore. So they would put it out that they were looking for, one of the early moves was they were looking for a stretch forward, which means they were looking to trade Julius Randle. That summer, 2020, before the beginning of the 2020-2021 season, Julius Randle decided, A, he was going to get in the best shape of his life. Tom Thibodeau favors veterans. At that time, Julius was 25 going on 26, 25 years old that summer. Tom Thibodeau worked with him and it decided, I'm going to put my stock in him. At the same time, the front office was like, we're looking for a stretch four. Those two things were happening early, okay? There was also COVID. That was a COVID season, okay? So there was a lot empty stadiums. The season started late. There was empty stadiums. I think they couldn't have more than 2,000 or 3,000 people at a game. Everybody was wearing masks, all of that. A lot of players were testing positive and having to go on COVID, protocol. And the Knicks had brought in Elfrid Payton from New Orleans, Reggie Bullock. I think they got him from Detroit. I can't remember what team. He'd been on a lot of teams, but they brought in Reggie Bullock, Elfrid Payton. They drafted Obi Toppin and Emmanuel Quickley. Obi was going to be that stretch four. But Tom Thibodeau had other ideas. And in this regard, they weren't exactly on the same page. Because Leon Rose and World Wide West wanted Obi Toppin. Tom Thibodeau, I don't know who he wanted at the 8th spot, but a lot of us were calling for a point guard. Myself, I was tossed between, I wanted Tyrese Halliburton. I didn't want Killian Hayes. It was between Tyrese Halliburton and the kid that ended up going to San Antonio, who wasn't point guard. He was a wing, Devin Vassell. I liked both of those guys that year. But I understood they took Tyrese Halliburton because we had point guard issues. Well, they took Obi Toppin. And Leon Rose was very happy that night. If you remember, he was rejoicing that they got Obi Toppin because the Cleveland Cavaliers were also interested in Obi Toppin, but they decided to go Isaac Okoro. And then Obi fell to the Knicks at 8. So the first year, that year, Tom Thibodeau put all his trust and all his hope in Julius Randle. Julius Randle responded. The Knicks responded. From going from a player that didn't give any effort on defense, for the first time, I noticed it in the preseason that year against Cleveland, as a matter of fact. He only scored 9 points in that preseason game. But I had seen him hustle more than I seen him the whole previous year in that one game. The defense he put up that year, I was like, oh, shoot, this is different, okay? Elfrid Payton was known as a defensive point guard. He could not score, not a scorer at all by any stretch, but he could play defense. Tom Thibodeau wants that. Reggie Bullock was a perimeter defender, very elite perimeter defender, a spot-up shooter. Couldn't dribble, couldn't do anything off the dribble, couldn't play make, but defense, spot-up shooting, boom. That season, of course, we know now that Julius Randle was All-NBA. All-Star, first time in his career. All NBA, first time in his career. A playoff appearance for the first time in his career. All that happened 2020, 2021. So now he had not dealt with all this before. And he got a taste of what it's like to play both sides of the ball. And then the Knicks just, they were struggling they were about 500. I wouldn't say struggling. They were about 500 at the trade deadline that year, which was a surprise to everybody after winning 21 games the whole season before. They had already got to 21 games by midseason. So then Tom Thibodeau and Leon Rose go get Derrick Rose. They needed scoring from the point guard position. They go get Derrick Rose. The Knicks win like 10 in a row. Okay, 2020, 2021, they went like 10 in a row down the stretch and secure the 4th seed in the East. Problem was, there was a lot of limitations. Derrick Rose was older. And in fact, he was injured a lot at the end of that season going into the playoffs. And so the Knicks were with Elfrid Payton. They were going with Derrick Rose. They were going with Reggie Bullock. And then, of course, there was the injury to Mitchell Robinson. And so you were dealing with Nerlens Noel, at your center. Nerlens Noel had a career year also that year defensively. Career year defensively that year. And so they get bounced in the first round by the Leprechaun in them. And the reason they get bounced in the first round by the Leprechaun in them, because all they had offensively was Julius. That's all they had. Julius was the first time he was in the NBA playoffs. Okay? And so they doubled him. They put the Leprechaun on Reggie Bullock. Smart. Nick McMillan, they shouldn't have fired him yesterday. That was a bad move by Atlanta. Bad move. But they put Young on Reggie Bullock because Reggie Bullock had no post game, couldn't go off the dribble, and all he could do was spot up. So all the Leprechaun could do was stand in front of him. That's what they did. They ended up winning 4-1, 4 games to 1 Atlanta. Okay. Julius Randle looked terrible, turning the ball over, getting frustrated, taking bad shots. He basically reverted to what he had been the year before that. And you forgot all about the All-NBA season he had. Following season, in an effort to get shooting, they bring in Evan Fournier. They bring in Kemba Walker in an effort to get a point guard that can dribble and kick. That was the thing. They wanted a point guard that could get into the lane and kick out. Well, that was Kemba Walker. Problem was, Boston had given up on him and sent him to OKC because he could only play on one leg. He was really only playing on one leg. And defensively, he is the ultimate weak link on defense. And so between him and Evan Fournier, the defense on the wing was horrible. And it started that season. And see, they were focusing offensively. Tibbs is a defensive-oriented coach. So they brought in these two. The Knicks were losing. They were struggling at the beginning of the season. Early on, Tibbs decided to bench Kemba Walker. And he decided to put Alec Burke at his point guard. When he had Emmanuel Quickley and Deuce McBride, apparently he didn't trust neither of them to play major minutes or obviously start, but he put Alec Burke as the point guard. The Knicks won 37 games, which in a rebuilding situation is not bad, but was a disappointment. The media made it a big disappointment because everybody was expecting bigger things after the 4th seed the year before. But this was a different team. Okay? Julius Randle reverted back to his pre-New York days, except now he had a really bad attitude. Bad attitude toward his own teammates, toward the fans, toward the referees, toward coaches. He just had a bad attitude. Okay? And he was still 2010, but if you can't keep your attitude in check as the leader of a team, your team is sunk. If you're depending on a player that's going to be your leader, your vet, and he has those anal qualities that Julius was displaying last season, your team is done. Okay? RJ Barrett, at age 21 at that time, showed way more maturity than Julius Randle. Way more. Okay? So that was another season, and I myself and others was expecting Julius to be traded. That perhaps the season that he had in terms of All-NBA and All-Star was a fluke. Because he was in his contract year. Remember, the Knicks had a team option on him. So that was what it was last year. Then apparently at the end of last year, and I was hoping he would get traded. I was hoping from the time trade deadline, no, okay, let's go draft night. Let's draft some draft. No, okay, let's trade him free agent. I was hoping he would trade. But then Ian Begley brought out they're not going to trade him because they're not just giving him away. They couldn't get first round picks for him. People wasn't calling about him. They were going to keep him. That was not good feeling, right? Then, of course, again, this past summer, now Johnny Bryant got a hold of Julius Randle, apparently by Julius Randle's own words, and had serious conversations with him that caused Julius to retrospect about how he had been behaving the previous year. Also, even his own son brought up the fact it was imitating his father, arguing when he was playing himself, arguing with imaginary referees. And Julius took stock of that, great on his part. The Knicks at the same time had not only Emmanuel Quickley and Obi, but they had drafted Deuce McBride. They had drafted Quentin Grimes, right? They had guys that were now young and they were maturing in Tom Thibodeau's system. Then, of course, there was Mitchell Robinson, who they needed to re-sign, which they did at a very reasonable contract for a guy that does what he does in terms of defense, in terms of offensive rebounding, which are two major things in Tom Thibodeau's system. So here comes Julius Randle this year. And he is not only as good as he was 2 years ago. Honestly, he's better. Convinced me. When you do it 1 year, okay, it's your contract year, okay, you can kind of, it's like Kuzma. People looking at Kuzma, be careful of Kuzma. With those of you trying to recommend the Knicks get him, even though he's a CAA client, be careful. And the reason I say be careful, he's in a contract year. He has never played this good before. Okay? And that happens a lot in the NBA. Dudes will find out how to play all of a sudden when money's on the table, right? Then they go back to chilling and wearing pink or whatever. But what I'm saying is, Julius got his money. And now he's playing better than he was 2 years ago. Passing the basketball. Not dribbling into double teams anywhere near the rate he was doing it prior to this year. And playing, I mentioned to you how a couple of times this year, when they needed stops on a guy that was killing them, they put Julius Randle on the dude, especially if he's a front court dude. And Julius would lock people up. The problem, I realized this year with Julius, although I was correct about his first season, there was times he just didn't give a crap on defense. His second season, when they went to the playoffs, he started giving a crap on defense. But what I realized then is that he gets confused defensively. Like when the ball's moving, people moving, he can get easily confused and end up guarding a space, almost like a one-man zone, and getting beat. But in terms of one-on-one defense, when he's engaged, like he was 2 years ago and like he is now, he's a really good one-on-one defender. Okay, really good. And I've seen him get stuck on point guards, get stuck on 2s, 3s, 4s. And he can guard him one-on-one now. He got the foot speed, the quickness, the athleticism. And I always knew he did. It's just that he never gave the effort. But now he is. On top of that, he's always been a strong rebounder. But I've noticed, there's numbers, people, and I look at the numbers, double figures and rebounds are a good, benchmark, for the most part. Even though you can get double figures and rebounds, if you're 7 feet without trying too hard. Or you can get double figure rebounds and it don't win no games for you. But I've watched Julius Randle get rebounds at crunch time. That's why I'm saying like a guy like Quentin Grimes, like I talked about yesterday, same thing. You look at his average, he's not averaging double figures and rebounds. But when you need an offensive possession in the fourth quarter, that's when Quentin gets his rebound. Okay? Or you need a one stop and get the ball back. That's when, and Julius Randle has been doing that at a high level this year, getting key rebounds, which is what I call grown man rebounds. Like it's you against two dudes, and he's getting the ball. He's cut down on the amount of bad shots that he's taking. He really is getting shots in the spots he knows he likes to shoot from, even though for other players, they might be bad shots. Sometimes a guy has positions on places on the floor that for other people would be a bad shot, but for them it's not because that's one of their spots. And he knows he's been getting to his spots and doing very well. Okay. He's also apparently allowed Jalen Brunson to be the man, to be the leader. He's allowed that. He's encouraged Quentin Grimes to shoot more. He's become, in other words, a leader. A real live, all-star level, all NBA level leader. And a two-way player. So, the question is then, a lot of people, when we talk about the Knicks, first of all, beginning of the season, a lot of knuckleheads was out here talking about, the Knicks are good, but everybody else has gotten better. Has this narrative sound familiar to you? Everybody else has also gotten better. So even though the Knicks are better, they'll probably win 37 games again this year. You ever heard that knucklehead foolishness from earlier this year? It was making me cringe. Well, anyway, now that the Knicks are the 6th seed and rolling, the Knicks are looking like a lock, which they probably are, to get top 6 in the East, which is what me and many of us in Knicks Nation believed all along. Now, that being the case, what will Julius Randle perform like in the playoffs this year as opposed to 2 years ago? Well, we must understand a couple of very important things. This team, this New York Knicks team, as a team, is a completely different team than 2 years ago. We got Jalen Brunson at the point guard, not Alfred Payton. No slight on Alfred Payton, but he is not Jalen Brunson. Just saying. Okay? Brunson is a winner, a leader, an elite footwork, elite scorer down the stretch of games, and already proved in the playoffs he can be a serious problem. So we got that at the point guard. We drafted and developed Quentin Grimes. Locked down on the perimeter. The makings of Allen Houston jump shot 2.0. Playmaking, rebounding, everything you need. Whatever you need to win, he's there to get it for you. R.J. Barrett is now, instead of being 20 like he was that year, he's 22, still young, still developing, but he's a better player than he was 2 years ago. Period. End of story. He's better than he was 2 years ago. And I expect him to do better down the stretch. It's important for his Knicks career that he does, but that's a different story. I expect him to come down the stretch this year and play a lot better. I expect better playoff performance from him. Mitchell Robinson is healthier this year. He was injured, but he's going to be healthy down the stretch here, as he was not 2 years ago. You had Nerlens Noel. Mitchell Robinson is, if you recall, some of y'all don't remember, top 3 in basketball in offensive rebounds. Okay? If he gets 8 boards, he's going to get 4 or 5 of them on offensive end. Big time offensive rebound. So much so, that's what allows other guys to get boards because they got to put 2 bodies on him or he's going to kill you. He's already had a 20 rebound game this year. He's had 20 rebound games in the past for the Knicks. Okay? And if you don't get on him, he's going to have 20 rebounds on anybody. Okay? So then, of course, there's the elite defense in terms of speed, length, athleticism, quickness from the 5 spot. So we got that this year. Then we got All Star Julius Randle playing complete team basketball with threats around him. Then the Knicks had the nerve to go and get Josh Hart. That brings Bob Deep to another level because now you got Obi, not in his rookie year, this is Obi 3rd year. Obi getting ready to be 25 in March. Okay? Then you got IQ in his 3rd year, who really is NBA level starter. Coming off your bench in Mobb Deep, you add Josh Hart to that. They went and signed Isaiah Hartenstein. They got Jericho Sims developing. This is a different team than 2 years ago because it's more of a team. More of a team. Tom Thibodeau's going with a 9-man rotation, and we got some 9 dudes that can ball. Okay, so that's a different squad. So this year, I'm expecting All Star Julius Randle to be playoff Julius Randle. Because it's not just him this year. Not by any stretch. And he is still a dominant rebounder. And yes, he does get confused on defense sometimes and gets beat. That's his weakness. He's not Michael Jordan. That's his weakness. But he's still a dominant rebounder, a dominant scorer. Okay? And he's now passing the basketball out of double teams. I like the Knicks' chances. We're going to talk tomorrow about what the East looks like in terms of the Knicks and the playoff positioning. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. But for today, I want y'all to understand this is a different Julius and this is a different Knicks team than it was 4 seed 2 years ago. This is a better team and a better Julius. Yes, the East has gotten better, but as I told you in the beginning of the season, the Knicks have gotten better, and somebody's going to have to give up their spot. They had all these teams ahead of the Knicks. And I said, "Oh, they had the whole top 6 filled in. The Knicks was barely gonna make the play in." I said, "Somebody giving up their spot." It's still true. Somebody else giving up their spot because we coming. Okay, so y'all enjoy your Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of the Knicks season. Enjoy the journey. So